Hamas is not having a good time in Texas. Man, guys, this is absolutely crazy. So there's protests going on across the country at UCLA, at USC, the UT, just basically countless universities across the United States. As we know, universities are co-opted indoctrination breeding grounds for the radical left-wing ideology, and unsurprisingly, they support terrorists. Okay, guys, so yesterday I said that if there were new developments with a campus protest situation, that I would update the video. And if you see me change shirts in this video, it's because yesterday there was news breaking and today there's news breaking, and I want to make this a complete video. So this may go at the beginning, but this is what happened, what I discovered today, and some of this came from last night. The Prime Minister of Israel, basically their president, is making comments about the situation on college campuses in the United States, and this, I think, is just going to add fuel to the rage and moral indignation leftists have at being seen as the frauds that they are. I've spent a lot of time, and by a lot of time I mean probably a couple dozen hours, thinking about what could cause leftists to openly, not secretly, but openly take the side of terrorists who do unspeakable things to women, slaughter families. I think I've come to an answer. And I realized this by looking at their response to the police. When police came to make sure that they were nonviolent, to keep things orderly, etc., the response to the police presence by college students across the nation was so vitriolic you'd think that they were there to protest the police rather than the existence of Israel, I guess. But anyway, let's listen to this video of Netanyahu, the president of Israel.
What's happening on America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. It has to be done.
I do think that the sentiment of the left is becoming so abhorrent and untenable, just divorced from not just objective reality, which postmodernism despises, but all sense of civility and morality, that some people are starting to wake up. And I'm talking about the older liberals who don't really understand why their party has betrayed them for communism. They see leftists openly taking the side of Hamas, just as they took the side of Hamas the day after October 7th, and heinous, unbelievable things were coming out. I mean, the videos coming out were soul-crushing, just disturbing to any human with warm blood in their system. But this video, I do believe, will be looked at in history. This will have a place in the pantheon of history when we look back and see possibly the beginning of World War III, the decline of America, the insanity being propagated in the form of psychopathic, predatory, resentful, political psychopathology. Because I remember a couple years ago when I was in high school, this was completely unthinkable. Utterly, utterly unthinkable that anyone could have this reaction to the Jewish people being attacked this way, much less that it would be done by leftists. It's just completely, if you gave me 1,000 years to imagine this outcome, I would not have predicted this outcome.
Not only because they attack Israel, that's bad enough. Not only because they want to kill Jews wherever they are, that's bad enough. It's also, when you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an...
Correct. This is the reason why it's different. This is the reason why the resentment is... it's out in the open. It's so widespread. It is for objective morality in the limit. And I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain that here in a second.
Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences. We see this exponential rise of anti-Semitism throughout America and throughout Western societies as Israel tries to defend itself against genocidal terrorists. Genocidal terrorists who hide behind civilians. Yet it is Israel that is falsely accused of genocide.
Right. The typical inversion of reality is the left-wing tactic, and it's being deployed here against Israel. And it's very interesting to see that they have no limits to this mental brokenness.
Israel, that is falsely accused of starvation and all sundry war crimes, it's all one big libel. But that's not new. We've seen in history that anti Semitic attacks were always preceded by vilification and slander. Lies that were cast against the Jewish people that are unbelievable, yet people believed them.
Correct. And I believe this is preceding a horrific event. And I'm saying this because I think it's true, not because I wish it will happen, but I believe that it is just the case. I think that this trend line, when you look at the macro scope of things, the pure hatred the left has for civilization, the death cult that has become the woke mind virus, it is preceding either a single horrific event or a series of horrific events, and not just against Israel, but against the United States. The resentment these people have for reality is eating them alive. It's burning their soul. It's ruining their minds. It's destroying their lives. This resentment has been a long burning fire in the hearts of leftists for a long time. But it's reaching fever pitches now, where at any opportunity they have to acknowledge objective morality, they do the opposite. At any chance they have to acknowledge objective reality, they do the opposite. If you ask them, can a man get pregnant? They will say the opposite of the truth. If you ask them, can a man become a woman? They will say the opposite of the truth. Not just because their ideology tells them truth doesn't exist, but because they hold unfathomable resentment for reality itself. I believe Netanyahu is correct here. I believe this is an important moment in history that we will look back on as, I think people will struggle to understand, perhaps, just as we struggle to understand how people could do what they did in the 1930s and 1940s. But we're seeing it here. The destroyed psyche of the leftists is manifesting across America, and it's a sickness.
And what is important now is for all of us who are interested and cherish our values and our civilization, to stand up together and to say enough is enough. We have to
right. Basically oppose the psychopaths, because that's really all that corrects the psychopathic behavior. They don't care about morality, but what they care about is being opposed in terms of power and being seen as a fraud. That's the reason why they despise free speech, by the way, because it's an existential threat. As soon as they know that someone can speak freely, they know that their ideology is facing an existential threat.
Anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine. It always precedes larger conflagrations that engulf the entire world. So I ask all of you, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are concerned with our common future and our common values, to do one thing. Stand up, speak up, be counted. Stop anti-Semitism now.
This is a good tweet right here. It shows, it makes a couple good points, which is that this is funded by George Soros and other very dark entities among the left, and 90% of the people protesting here, he says 99%, but I think that it's probably, some people understand that they're actually opposing civilization. They are just here because their ideology commands them their ideology commands them to be here. Much like people were commanded to just go along with what happened in the 1930s and 1940s, and to go against the ideology for the radical left is to be a bad person. It's to basically be unpersoned. This is the very difficult process that I undertook when I was leaving high school, because I recognized that I'd been lied to. I discovered Jordan Peterson in 11th grade, and it's very difficult when you step away from the cult of counterfeit virtue. And I have a very disagreeable personality, and yet it was still very difficult for me. So it's almost impossible for most people to overcome the barrier of saying, I'm going to point out that everyone's lying here. This is actually a tyranny being disguised as false compassion and false virtue. A lot of these videos going around, people saying Texas is not tolerant of terrorists. I do love to see it because Texas is my home state. Okay, this is a video of something Hamas did that I can't show on YouTube. It's inhuman. Crazy how that's a public video that people can look at and still leftists support. Okay, so speaking of prominent politicians, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, made a statement saying, arrests being made right now and will continue until the crowd disperses. These protesters belong in jail. Anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in Texas, period. Students joining in hate-filled anti-Semitic protests at any public college or university in Texas should be expelled. And he's completely correct that they should be expelled. I think that there will be efforts in the future to probably categorize them so that companies don't hire them. I can tell you that I definitely would not want to hire somebody who is openly opposed to morality. It makes them very unpredictable and untrustworthy. even if they are skilled at their job, working with them would be a hazard, it would be a liability. So seeing how leftists are enraged with police and they're screeching, they're screaming, some of the footage that I covered yesterday will come after this and you'll see what I'm talking about. I may try to cut it down so it's shorter for you guys so that it's easier. So this is, a shorter video. The reason these unthinking college students, these leftists, are enraged at police is the same reason they're protesting. This is the realization that I came to. The police symbolize a structural, coherent order to society, just as condemning terrorists to obliteration and recognizing objective evil represents a structural, coherent order to reality. That structural, coherent order is morality. That is what they oppose, but they really oppose the structural, coherent order of reality itself. The leftist ideology and the ensuing remade, ravaged psyche in its image cannot handle the individual relationship with that objective reality, whether that be morality or just the coherent order to reality. So it becomes infuriated with both the individual and reality. This is what postmodernism does. It becomes infuriated with the notion of there being better and worse ways of looking at the world, and then Marxism says that there's no such thing as the individual, only such thing as a group identity defined by power disparities between people based on identity or class. Originally it was class, now it is identity categories stemming from intersectionalism, which basically just means your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, economic status, that sort of thing. So underlying all of this, there is the sickness of resentment for reality itself. I don't know which university this is. It looks like it might be UCLA. I'm not sure.
Hands off! Hands off!
Take the tent
Hands
down.
off! Hands off!
They're trying to cosplay as homeless, I guess. They're pitching tents to protest in favor of a terrorist organization. The left is... Yep.
Don't touch them! Hey! Don't touch them! Don't touch them! Hands off! Hands off! Don't touch them! Don't touch them! Hands off them! Don't touch them! Leave them alone! Leave them alone! Hands off! Hands off! Don't touch us! Hands off! Stop them!
Wow, okay, yeah, so this is LA, because they were just chanting LAPD is the KKK, as they are being forced to vacate the premises so they can no longer protest in favor of terrorist organizations. And by the way, I'm not using the word terrorist the way leftists use the word terrorist and say any person who votes for Trump is a terrorist. I mean, they are literally supporting Hamas. It's eerie how alike these people are to a scorned, degenerate woman who opposes reality just because it judges her. I mean, look at their, deranged faces. Look at how desperate they are. They're chanting that the police are KKK members. This is a sick population. This is the modern version of the Charlottesville moment, where we're going to look at this and realize, okay, half the country is completely cognitively impaired. They are disconnected from reality entirely. And the fact that we can see these videos on Twitter, on X, is the insurance of that. Everyone gets to see these people are lunatics. This, I'm pretty sure, is at UCLA. Wait, is this UT? I'm not sure. Maybe this is UT. Marching in favor of a terrorist organization. That's currently holding hostages. Still, by the way. That's the left. That's the compassionate left. Here's a video of something else the left is doing. It's incredible how we can just see this. Like, it's just out in the open, and this is their brand. This is their identity.
Today what we're going to do is we're going to shout, Free Palestine. Can I hear that?
A drag queen performing in front of children, asking them to shout, Free Palestine. See, their opposition is not based in logic, reason, rationality. They haven't read any of the religious doctrine that Hamas is obsessed with. They haven't consumed any manifestos. This is purely a feminine, emotional, deranged, broken response like you would see in a child or a scorned woman. to all systems of objective reality. That's what you're looking at here. Could you imagine if this was the right, or if this was just some other species, if we were being studied, they would look at this and say, okay, they have a drag queen performing in front of kids, asking the kids to say, "Free Palestine." The ideology that caused this to take place is clearly broken. Now here's this video. This one just wraps it all together and proves everything that I was saying. They haven't read any Muslim religious texts. They haven't agreed with Hamas. They don't know what their positions are. They couldn't point Gaza out on a map. All they know is that objective morality is being exercised against terrorists, and this fact judges them because their ideology denies, in its alignment with postmodernism, the existence of objective moral frameworks.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Because it's a white supremacist organization that's based on masculinity, merit, and organizations that are coherent. The same reason they're protesting in favor of Palestine, protesting in favor of terrorists who would do unspeakable things to them. The left protests against morality. The left protests against reality.
More educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support.
This is a cult, guys. The cult of the woke mind virus ravages people's minds. It prevents them from being able to think. It makes them narcissistic beyond belief because it tells them they're good people. It's twofold. The narcissism is twofold. It tells them that they're good people as a result of adhering to the ideology rather than being virtuous or meritorious. And secondly, it says reality is made in the image of our ideology rather than being objective in and of itself and therefore making you subordinate to it. These people are sick. What you're looking at is a sick mind, and there are millions, especially young women, who have been utterly destroyed by this mind virus, protesting in favor of a terrorist organization who would, if they had control over their lives, would take away their rights and make them into sex slaves. They are protesting in favor of this organization, of these people. A more crystallized example of cutting off your nose to spite your face has never existed before. The left is at war with reality itself. You know, if you showed this to any sector of the population, and still, if you showed this to 90% of the population of Earth today, but 100% of the population of Earth from 10 years ago, going back forever, they would view this as some sort of sick, depraved scene from hell. And look, you have mothers there voluntarily. They definitely hate masculinity. Look, you can see the fat bulging out of their shirts. Masculinity is toxic. It judges them. Looks like they haven't washed their hair either. They're unattractive. They've brought their kids here, probably suggesting that they transition as well. We are dealing with people whose enemy is reality. It's a new war, but that's what we're facing. Subscribe to the channel, guys.